My name is Tony Ricketts. I am the founder of Lawnline Marketing, where we focus on marketing strategies for lawn and landscape companies throughout the industry. That's all we work with. And I've got a couple of guests here with me as well. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Jonathan Pototschnik. Many of you may be familiar with him from Service Autopilot. He's also founded a lawn care company called City Turf. They're out of the Dallas area. So Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind, just take a minute or two, kind of introduce yourself, tell us a hair about your background and why we should listen to some of the advice that you're going to be given here today.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. My background is I've done a lot of stuff from technology to different services. As Tony mentioned, I have a company named City Turf in the Dallas market. We have 10,000 active clients across providing a bunch of different services. I've been in the commercial cleaning industry. I've been in multiple technology companies. The one that most everybody knows is Service Autopilot, which we started in 2010. I've got a business group. It's kind of my favorite thing I've done inside the Service Autopilot world, which is called Academy. And services is my thing. It's the industry that I've been in most of my career. If you think about technology as well, and it's the thing I'll be in for the next 20 years in some form. So lots of diverse experience. I like these businesses a lot.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here today, Jonathan, taking some time out of your very busy schedule. Very happy to have you here on with us. I also have a couple of other guests here today as well. Two other guests, in fact. One is a guy by the name of Chester Bachinski. I'm going to actually let him introduce himself. So Chester, why don't you come on real quick? Tell us real quick about who you are and a little bit about your business real fast.
Sure. Thanks, Tony. As Tony said, my name is Chester Bachinski. I am in the lawn and landscape space. I'm up in Michigan, and we are, super busy company. We were on the Inc. 5000 list last year, fastest privately held growing companies in the U.S. And I've learned a lot from Jonathan, learned a lot from Tony and Chase, and I'm just happy to be here and share where I can.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, Chester. We'll be getting a lot of insights from you. And the last one that I want to introduce is Chase Coates. So Chase, I think you're on here as well. I can't see you, but if you can hear me, please jump in for a second. Tell us a little bit about you, the company that you run, and just a little bit about who you are.
You bet. I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
We got you.
Perfect. So I own two companies. We're based out of Idaho Falls, Idaho. Lawn Buddies is our lawn care pest control division, and Outback Landscape is our main company. I started Outback Landscape about 17 years ago, mowing lawns in junior high, and I've known Chester for probably going on 5 or 6 years here now. So we got connected through Service Autopilot Academy, and he's a great guy. We've known each other for a while. So that's kind of my background. Got into landscaping at an early age, and just love it. So
awesome. Well, it should also be important to know that all of these guys run 7- and 8-figure businesses, so that's they're very prominent people that you can learn from. They got a lot of good information and insights, and we're going to dive into some of that today. It should also be noted that both Chase and Chester have been very active in peer groups themselves. That's why they're in here. They're going to talk from their firsthand experience being part of these peer groups, whereas Jonathan has actually started these peer groups and has built some of them. So in today's meeting, some of the things that we're going to talk about are topics that we're going to touch on. First, we're going to talk about what peer groups actually are, what that means, how they operate, what kinds of benefits you'll get from joining a peer group. What should you set your expectations at when you join a peer group? Those are a couple of things that we're going to discuss. We're also going to talk about some of the peer groups that are in the industry. We're not going to focus on just Service Autopilot or Service Autopilot's Academy group. We're not going to focus on just one specific. We want to let you know which other types of peer groups are out there, who's best suited for them based on your size, based on your service focuses, and things like that. Then we're going to end up with a Q&A session, as I mentioned, where you guys can be spotlighted and speak with the rest of us regarding your questions about peer groups. So I'm going to start off by defining peer groups. And I'm actually going to talk about my peer group first. So peer groups is something that I took a long time to pull the trigger on. I had joined the Facebook groups. I had gone to a couple of industry events trying to meet with people. But as a business owner myself, one of the things that I constantly struggled with was having a support system and network of people that I could bounce ideas off of, that I could go to for help, that I could ask questions to, talking things about strategy, growth, key hires, revenue, all of those kinds of things. And I felt like I was out on my own, right? And it was very stressful. It was very tough. And then I got an invite to come to a webinar or to a peer group meeting that was live down in Miami. I decided to take the coach up on it. I went down there. I met with the people. I saw what it was about, and it was a turning moment for me, both in my business and my personal life, because it gave me that support network and the systems and the coaching and all of those things that I needed from people who had done it before in the past. And that's what really helped propel and project my business, the marketing agency, to the multiple seven figures where it's at now. So had I not joined that peer group, I think I would probably be half the size, if that, had I not done it. I attribute a lot of our success actually to our peer group, even though they don't actually do any of the work. So peer groups is something that I'm in, and it's something I'm very passionate about. Also, if you guys are unaware, a lot of people refer to these as masterminds. So if you hear the keyword mastermind, peer group, mastermind, these are all the same types of things. So let's talk about what they are. They are a collection of people that own businesses in a like industry. So in this case, it would be lawn care, or in mine, I'm in one specifically for digital marketing agencies. And then there's some out there as well that are generals, that are for just entrepreneurs in general. So peer groups are going to come with various different benefits and events and things like that. We're going to dive into that a little bit here in just a minute. But Jonathan, let me bring you in on this. How did I do on my definition of peer groups? I feel like I didn't explain it very well. Do you have something that you can add there that kind of helps people understand exactly what a peer group is?
I think you defined it fine. I think the thing that will be the unlock for everyone is us chatting about what are the attributes of a peer group, what can you get out of it, the benefits, those types of things. And I think that would help help everyone sort of clue in on, hey, is this right for me? Is this something I should think about? And I would just maybe double click on what you said. I've been in 3 groups, and 2 of the groups were general business, and one of the groups was focused on a specific vertical or industry. I think there's value in both. Frankly, I think that specific to one focused on a very specific industry, I think there might be a little bit more value in that one. We'll probably come back to this, just to, I'm maybe jumping ahead just slightly, but one thing I'd really encourage everyone to think about is when you're thinking about being in a group, you are going to evolve over time. And so the group you need to be in is going to evolve. So I don't know if this is the right place to say this, but I think that you shouldn't feel that you pick a group today and you're in that for the rest of your life, or that you have to stay in it, or there's any commitment to stay in it long term. You need to figure out where you need to be and what you need to get at any moment in time. And so the reason I just jumped forward and said that is because it might be for a season, you need to be in a group that's very specific to the industry we're all in right now. And eventually you might say, you know what, I just need to be around other business owners in different industries so I can swipe ideas from other industries and be around people doing big things and open my mind. And so over time, this will evolve. So I'd say, Tony, let's just chat about what's the value and how do you figure this stuff out?
Absolutely. Let's do that then. Let's jump right in. That's a great point. And we'll talk more about specific versus general groups here in a few minutes. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about the dynamics of a peer group and how it works in general. Now, every peer group is going to vary. They're not all going to be structured exactly the same. So Jonathan, let's start with Academy. Tell us, how is Academy structured as far as the logistics? When do you guys meet? How does it work? Do you get in person? Is it all virtual? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So Academy is a little unique as compared to most groups, at least to my knowledge, it is. And so I don't think that as you're seeking out a group, this has to be what it looks like. So I'm just going to define what I had gravitated towards when we built ours. Something you have to know about me is I like lots of data and facts and details. I like to figure things out and solve problems. And so because I'm the one that started the group, I naturally created what I like, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing. And so one of the things that we do in Academy is we do a monthly call. And in that monthly call, the objective is that we want to solve for some type of a problem or some type of an opportunity. Maybe it's a marketing or recruiting challenge, or maybe it's something around your finances or your numbers, but there's some topic that we're focused on that call. And so what we'll do is we will talk through that topic. We'll teach around that topic. Where appropriate, we'll give materials and handouts around that, or done for you material around that topic. And in our world, that training, we'll call it, can go from 3 to 6 hours. And we do that every single month. And so that's, I think, a little bit unique in that there's also a flavor, and this is the more common flavor. Maybe give you 2 other flavors. And I know you're asking about Academy, but you'll kind of give you a couple other ideas. I've been in a group before where it's 12 individuals and you get together 3 or 4 times a year, and you sit in a room for 2 days, and each person gets some amount of time and goes around the table to talk about what is going on in my business, what are the updates from last quarter, what are my challenges, and the whole group tries to help you work on that challenge. That's another flavor. Others are you just get together in a meeting format, and it's really trying to create a network of individuals or a network between people where there's a relationship that's built, and through a relationship, that's where breakthroughs and ideas come from. So sometimes it's just literally getting people in a room and creating a discussion, and then naturally breakthroughs and ideas happen. And so there's a million different ways this can happen. I'll give you one more. I was in a group for 5 years that we basically traveled around and did cool stuff. And actually Academy does a version of that as well called Elite. But I was in a group where we'd travel around and we'd go to, Puerto Rico or Argentina or Aruba, you name it, all these cool places. And then while at that venue or in that location, we would get together and meet with business owners in those local markets. But really what was happening is it was creating relationships amongst all of us in the group, and all the magic happened while you were on the trip or when you're talking on the phone with your new friends post-trip. So lots of different ways this could look. You just want to figure out what is the one that's most attractive to you.
Absolutely. And that's a great point. And one of the things that I want to highlight here that he mentioned is that it's a combination of virtual and physical things that happen in these peer groups. A couple others that I can speak to of how they operate in my personal peer group that I'm in, we meet 3 times a year in person. My peer group has about 200 different agencies in it. There are virtual meetings every month. We get segmented out, and we'll talk about segmentation here in just a few minutes with like types of businesses. And we meet once a month with those similar types of businesses. 3 times a year, every 4 months, we meet in person in a 3-day event that is live, kind of like Jonathan was talking about. We all get together in a big room. Now, generally about 80 people or so show up to the live event. We get segmented out in there, do all kinds of workshops and things to improve our business. Another peer group in the industry that I'm aware of, and we'll talk about some of these later, would be Jeffrey Scott's Leaders Edge. This is more focused on landscape companies. These peer groups that he runs, they have their virtual meetings. They also have lots of in-person meetings. I know that he's got several, 3 or 4 of them throughout the year that he does, as well as all other types of education throughout. Real quick, let me go to Chester, because Chester's in a general organization, a general peer group. Chester, does your other peer groups that you're in, like the Entrepreneurs Organization, does that operate any differently than what Jonathan or I have already discussed?
It's similar. So there's no monthly call in EO, but there are the small group relationships that you get to build sort of outside of the group. And then there are also big group activities that are held. And I think that's another major benefit of peer groups, is that when you're in a paid peer group with other entrepreneurs and you're all paying to participate in the group, you can afford some really fantastic experiences and speakers that there's really no way you could get access to on your own. We've been dune buggying in the desert with 50 other entrepreneurs, and we've played paintball, and we've had speakers come that cost anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000 to book a couple hours of their time. So you can get close firsthand experience with a lot of things that you just couldn't get access to on your own.
Absolutely. Definitely. And Chase, let's bring you in too. You're part of obviously Academy, but also Marty Grunder's ACE groups, which is another peer group in the industry.
Yep.
Tell us about the structure that you're seeing in other peer groups. Anything different than what we've already discussed?
I would say that the different peer groups all typically seem to have different levels, and it kind of depends on what you're trying to get out of the peer group. There are some peer groups, like Chester mentioned, where you do a lot of traveling, you do a lot of in-person stuff, and you're doing more events. There's a lot of peer groups that are strictly virtual. And then, there's peer groups where it's more involved, it's a little bit more intimate. There's maybe 12 or 10 companies in your group. And typically in those groups, we get a little bit more detailed, where you're reporting, sharing financial information on a quarterly basis. And you put that up on a screen, and everybody knows everybody else's numbers in the group. And that can be beneficial because you have a good way to benchmark your company against other people and see maybe where you're winning or where you're losing. And so there's some huge benefit to that. And so I think a lot of it, one, depends on kind of where you're at in business, what you're trying to get out of it, whether it's more marketing help, business help, might depend on whether you go into a peer group that's more specific or industry based. And the other thing I would say, I've been in 2 peer groups. I've been in Service Autopilot Academy and Marty Grunder's ACE groups, and I've been doing those almost at the exact same time for probably going on 5 years now. And it's a big commitment to be part of a peer group, but what you get out of it is invaluable. But one thing I would add is, if you're in a peer group where traveling and going to events and staying in touch with people is a big part of the group, make sure that you're willing to be able to set aside the time to do that. And make those events, because if you're part of a peer group but you can only make half the events, you really don't get the full force and the value out of being in that group.
Absolutely. That's a good point. Make time for them. That is a big thing. All of us are very busy. Everybody in this meeting owns a business. We're all very busy, but it really comes down to, you don't know what you don't know. And that peer group can help you get those insights of key aspects of your business that you don't know about. So the time that you make for them is extremely, extremely valuable. One thing I want to point out that Chase mentioned is sharing of the numbers. So that's something that we do in our personal peer group. I'm not sure if Academy group members share their numbers or not. Jonathan can speak more to that, but this is something that's really helped me in a niche specific peer group gauge how I'm doing. There's a couple of things that I'm looking at here when I look at my peer group's numbers. So I look at things like, how many staff members do they have compared to their revenue? And I look at that at ours. I'm looking at our revenue versus the number of staff that we have and see if we're in line. I look at people's numbers to understand their growth rates. How fast are they growing in comparison to us? Now, you shouldn't always compare your business to other people's businesses, but having those kinds of benchmarks where you can kind of gauge how you're doing as far as a growth rate and making sure that you're on pace or on track with what other people are doing in the industry was extremely helpful for me. In fact, internally, I'm a very competitive person, so it actually kind of created a bit of a competition within me that I want to get out there and I want to beat these people. So understanding their numbers gave a lot of insights to me, so I know where we are and how our business is financially running. Jonathan, can you speak? Do the Academy members share their numbers between each other?
So we have two groups in Academy. Elite is the upper group, and we have in that group, we're not currently doing that, but I will say that, and this is the magic, this is the imperativeness of finding the right group. The elite group is a very closely guarded group of extremely strong relationships. So even if from month to month on a call, we're not actively sharing them, they're sharing they talk very openly. Like, it's extremely open. And
right.
So there's not necessarily a formal mechanism for it at the moment, but we have historically done that. And I do buy into it. I think it's valuable.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to the next topic on here that I want to talk about, and that is the expertise, the people, the sessions that come in that you'll be able to learn from. I'll start with my peer group that I've worked with. So in my peer group, being that we're digital marketing, one of the things that my coach did is he brought in a guy named Dennis Yu, who is one of the best well-known social and digital marketing experts in the world. He's done like digital marketing for people like MGM, right? Major corporations. He's been on all the TV shows and everything that he's a big expert. And they brought him in and he did a full hour and a half, almost 2 hour session telling us of how he operates his digital marketing agency and how they build people, how they do their processes, how they do their systems and things like that, which was extremely valuable for me. Last month, they brought in another agency owner who had built his business to about $40 million and then decided to sell it, and he exited. And they talked about those exit strategies and how he did it and all of those inside information, which, like, I believe it was Chester or Chase, one of them mentioned that you get access to these people and you can hear from them when you otherwise would not be able to. And it's very specific to you. So the speakers and the classes and the experts that these groups bring in are very invaluable. Jonathan, can you talk about a couple of the experts or people or companies that you've brought in to speak to Academy and the types of people they got to see?
Yeah, I will say in Academy, I do quite a bit of the monthly training. We do bring people in, and that comes from the fact that I'm so close to the industry. But we've run in a bunch of really interesting people, but I tend to be pretty fond of some of the financial individuals. So Greg Crabtree, Jim Houston, Jason Cupp. There's a variety of individuals like that. When it comes to the marketing stuff, I tend to do a lot of that stuff. I'm very fond of sales and marketing personally, and so just lots of different people in a variety of industries. But the big ones that come to mind for me are anything financial, because that's usually one of the big unlocks in building these businesses. Good. And I usually look for expertise external to us on that.
Gotcha. Chester, anybody that sticks out in your mind from either of your groups that was just like, that is completely awesome that they brought this person and you got to hear from them?
This answer is probably a little unconventional, but when I joined my first peer group in 2016, we were doing $200,000 a year in revenue. And it's like, you mean to tell me that I can sit down with a guy that's doing 2 million and just ask him about his company?
Pick his brain.
And the answer is yes. So the people that are in the group with you that are ahead of you on the road in business or have a different perspective, it's like, for me, it was like talking to a celebrity. Right. I'm like, I would ask, just that's what peer-to-peer learning and peer groups are all about, is being able to share openly and just ask. And you would be amazed at how willing guys like Chase and Jonathan and other people in peer groups are to just openly tell you what they've done and what has worked for them and allow you to apply it to your business, because you really don't need to recreate the wheel, right? You just need to kind of make a wheel of your own and model other wheels, and you'll get there. So to me, that's been the most exciting guests I've met are other people in the group.
People in the group, absolutely.
Can I interject there real quick,
Yeah.
Tony? I think that's a really, really good point. So as you're evaluating the group you want to be in, I'm not sure how to tell you exactly how to do this. Maybe it's a scenario where you try out the group, but to Chester's point, it's really easy to make a group look like it's about whomever is running the group or built the group. That is a little bit of what you're paying for and buying, but you are very much paying for the access to the other people in the group and the ability to build this, which is what Chester just said. If you get in the right group, so for example, if you're getting into a group and your business is $1 million, I'd say if you're hopping into a group and the majority of the companies in a group are doing $500,000, you'd need to look for something bigger. You want to, and it doesn't mean that an individual running a $500,000 business when you're running $1 million cannot give you all kinds of great ideas and unlocks or challenge you and push you. That it doesn't mean that at all. It's just that what's the caliber of the individual in the group? Are you going to learn from them, and are they going to stretch you? And then more important, will you really even have a relationship with them? So for example, if you get in a group and you're like, hey, these aren't really my people, or they feel stuffy, or they feel hard to access, that's not the right place. Where you want to be as a place where it's like, you look around the room and you're like, I like these people. These are kind of my people. I would feel comfortable telling somebody what my problem is, whatever it is. I've got too much debt. How the world do I get out of it? Or my numbers have declined. Like you want to look around at the group and say, I'm willing to tell people stuff I'm a little embarrassed about, and I'm not just going to show up in the group and put on a happy face and try to make everybody think I'm killing it and winning all the time. There's no value in that. The value is in having friends that you can be honest with. And if you don't feel that the people you're getting in the group with are accessible in that way, you're going to miss out, to Chester's point, on what I think is probably more than 50% of the value. Like at Chester's level, Chase's level, my level, Tony, because we've had a lot of experiences in business, I'm sure like many of you, we don't need somebody to give us every answer. We just sometimes need somebody to bounce stuff off, or we sometimes just need somebody to have a conversation with because we're frustrated, or to, like on the bounce off example, I just want to be able to say to Chester, man, this is what I've been thinking about. Have you tried this? Is this a good idea? Would you tell me I'm going in the wrong direction? Or maybe I'm talking to Chase and Chase is like, I think you're thinking too small on this one. You need to go faster. You need to go bigger. Like that is to me more valuable, frankly, than even the speakers that come to the group. And I know this is what Chester just said, but I just wanted to really emphasize that point because I think it's imperative that that's something you're considering.
Absolutely, 100% right. And one thing that I found, and is very true in my peer group that I'm in now, and I'm getting to that point, is where you almost feel like you're outgrowing the group, where most people are below you in your revenue. But I still stay in my peer group, even though a lot of the speakers that come in are not teaching me a lot of new information, but it's the people. I do it because it's like a big club, a big group of bunch of people that are exactly like me. They're like me in every which way, personality and business and everything else. And having that network of support is the biggest thing for me. That's why I keep paying for it. And we'll talk about what some of these groups cost here in just a few minutes. I want to bring up Chase though real quick. Chase, was there anything that stood out for you in any of your groups as far as sessions or speakers that was a game changer for you, that really moved the needle for you?
Man, I mean, the ones that Jonathan mentioned, Jason Cupp, Jim Houston, one that really stuck out to me that we had recently was Steve McClatchy. He was not industry specific, very good leadership training, leadership skills. He's got a really good book, and I've always enjoyed him. So getting to have him and send him questions and talk to him for basically an hour, a little over an hour, was really cool. And then I would echo what Chester said. Being in a peer group with people that will stretch you and you can talk to. And I think your role kind of changes in a peer group too. Like if you get into a peer group and they become your best friends. Like all of my best friends are in my peer groups because at least where I live, I mean, it's really hard to find people that are aligned with where you're going and what you want to do and have the same challenges that you do. And I found that you've got to cast a pretty big net to go find those people. And I would way rather hang out with Chester and talk to him about something than like someone from my hometown that I went to high school with. Like you just don't do that. Like, so you connect on a different level. And so all of my best friends I've met through all of my peer groups. And I would say that's been a huge game changer for us. It's just getting aligned with people who are like you. And I think you're going back to your role changing. And if you get in a group and you're the biggest guy in the group, that may not be beneficial. But if you get into a group and you're the smallest guy and you can kind of grow your way to be, one of the bigger companies in that group, if you get along and you're all really good friends, your role may change in that group a little bit, where you still get things out of the group, but you get some benefit from helping other people. And we went and saw another landscape company a month or so ago, and I picked up stuff there from them. I mean, you find stuff everywhere. I'm like, man, why don't we do that? That's a really good idea. And so you kind of, you got to take all the good with it. But yeah, I would echo what Chester said. You've got to investigate the group. Whoever's running the group is very important because they set the tone for the group and they set the general direction of the group. And they also kind of guard and align with that person of who gets into that group. And so you end up with a really good mix of people who are very aligned. So that's very important.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's the key to it all is these people. I mean, those of you who are here watching, I mean, just imagine if you had a cell phone with 20 different phone numbers in it of all other business owners exactly like you that are willing to answer your call, answer your questions, help you out, that you can just pick up the phone and text message, get a resource from, things like that. It's just unreal to be able to have that. When I did it, it's like I went from inside of a closed box that I was living in to being out in the open world. It's just amazing that the resources and people that come to you through these groups. Now, for those that are sitting here watching, I would like to ask a quick question to those of you that are on here. What's the reason that you're looking at joining a peer group? And go ahead and put it into the chat. We'll keep talking here a little bit, but we want to see, why are you looking for a peer group? Is it because you don't have people to bounce ideas off of? Is it because you need support? You need people to give you guidance? You're looking for direction? What is the reason that you're looking at or considering a peer group? Just throw that into the chat, and we're going to keep going here. Now, another thing I want to talk about that Jonathan actually mentioned earlier was done-for-you resources. I want to dive into those a little bit. I know in my agency group, they provide us with all kinds of resources, things that they call swipe and deploy, meaning you can take them exactly as is and start utilizing them. Jonathan, could you talk at all about some of the done-for-you type resources that Academy has provided to some of the group, or some of those other types of resources that they've been provided with to help run and manage the business?
Yep. Examples would be, we have what we call a first impression strategy. And so it's, once you convert a lead into a client, what happens immediately after? What's that experience? And so it's a variety of things that you will give or send to the client. Or another might be, I know many may not still use door hangers, but door hangers still work in certain circumstances and in certain markets. And so we have done for you door hangers. We have the Illustrator files or the Photoshop files that then you put your logo on and you tweak them as necessary, but the copy's been tested, they've been built. We have job ads and recruiting ads in English and Spanish that have been used by my company. We created them and tested them. And in 1 year, we recruited 100 people in 20 something days using these ads. It's that kind of a thing. I'm not saying you'll get 100 people in 20 days using my ads, because we were knocking on doors and we put out 80,000 of these things, and we had deployed people to go to apartment. I mean, it was a massive mass action type scenario. But my point is, in telling you that, those are some of the examples, and there's lots of different tools or templates you'll get from different groups of something similar to that.
Absolutely. So imagine you need to hire some people, for example, and you don't want to sit down and take the time to write the job descriptions up. You're not to the level yet where you have an assistant or an office manager that can handle that for you. These peer groups, and my peer groups, do the same thing, and I'm sure more than just Service Autopilot Academy does it as well. Yep. Where these are given to you, that's going to save you hours and hours and hours of time. So it's not just about the networking and the people and the speakers and all that, but there's also resources being provided to you as well. That's going to shave hours of your time off. And as you continue to grow your business, that all of us have no doubt found, time is our most valuable resource. And anything that you can do to get more of that back is going to be really, really good for you as you continue to scale. And these roadmaps are laid out for you to kind of tell you how to scale and what's going to work and what's not going to work. So let's talk next about, real quick, on the online side of it. CJ is going to write off vacations. That's why he wants to look at a peer group. That is true. I write off 3 vacations a year down in Miami. So let's talk about the online side of it. My peer group has a very active Facebook group to it. So we have the virtual meetings every month. We have the in-person meetings a couple times a year, but we also have a Facebook group. And the Facebook group has hundreds of people. There's actually a couple of different ones. Our top group is actually called Elite as well. So we have 3 segmented groups inside of our bigger one. And we have groups, Facebook groups for each of those. And our Facebook group and ours, we have about 200 agencies in there. I would say we probably have about 30 to 40 posts or conversations every single day. So this is one of the best resources for us. If you are looking on how to do something or find a resource, you can go into this Facebook group of ours, do a search for whatever it is you're looking for, and you'll find somebody that has already discussed this, gotten feedback, gotten resources, all of that type of stuff. And this is where a ton of the value comes from, is those online Facebook groups. So Jonathan, I think you guys do have a Facebook group as well for Academy. Can you talk about that?
It's the same as what you just described. We do. And that's where the conversation happens. For years, we had a forum as well, but the reality is everybody goes to Facebook. Everybody's got it on their phone. So the way that they might access answers to questions is first and foremost Facebook. I suspect a lot of members at this point just call each other and text each other, to be frank. I mean, because they've developed such relationships, but Facebook is highly active. And then we still maintain what I describe as a forum, but it's not so much to have conversations, it's more to access 80 historical videos and trainings and documents and things of that sort.
Yep, absolutely. So those are very helpful, is having those resources available. Next, let's dive into the next topic here, which is going to be support for key team members. Now, not every peer group is necessarily going to do this. My peer group does. So we have a secondary peer group called the A players. And in our A players, this is where my operations manager, a couple of the directors from my various departments, they get together with other operations managers and other directors of those same departments and other companies. So when we're meeting every month as the agency owners, there's a secondary meeting going on with our key leadership team members off to the side, where all the leadership team members from the various agencies are all collaborating and doing the same types of masterminding that we are. So my mastermind and peer group does have it for your team. Jonathan, does Academy allow you to bring in team members to partake?
You can bring team members onto the monthly calls. You can, if you're an elite, you can bring team members on the trip. And then in the last 6 or 7 months, we've had 2 calls for operations managers, which seems to have potential. And so it's probably something that we'll do more of. Describe it as we were testing out the concept more than we had fully committed to it. We were seeing if there was interest.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
It's very smart. I personally think that's highly valuable.
100%. And I would agree that you should definitely keep it going. That's definitely something that's going to be good. Chase, do you guys allow your team members in over at Marty's ACE groups?
No, not really. Depends on the trip. So there's a trip once a year where you can bring your team, bring everybody to it. The trips where we're doing facility tours and we are sharing financials, we're pretty much laying, like you said, everything out in the open. So those guys are not involved in those. It's very much just a high level, basically a finance meeting. And we'll typically process an issue while we're there. So someone brings something that they're struggling with, or they're working on, or they're trying to work through. And as a group, we'll all give them feedback based on that, like start, stop, keep type things. So those are super beneficial. They are not as involved in those. Again, I think it depends on the size of your company, but there's some huge benefit, I think, to developing your leadership team as well, and not just stopping with yourself. That's one thing I've noticed in our peer groups is you can go be in a peer group or 2 peer groups for 5, 6, 7 years and go learn all this stuff. But if you're not good at bringing it back to your team and spreading that information to them and working on those things that you're seeing or bringing back, or, if you're doing facility tours, taking photos and putting them on OneDrive or Dropbox so that they can see what you're seeing, you're really limiting what you're doing in the peer group as well. But being able to bring that back and disseminate that to the team is super important. I think that's one thing that a lot of people overlook going on these trips, is not sharing that information with their team. Depending on the size of your company, sometimes it's not feasible for you to travel that much and take 4 or 5 people, 3 or 4 times a year somewhere. So it just totally depends on where you're at. But if it's just you traveling, I think one thing is just to make sure you bring that information back to the team.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I want to point out that you mentioned there was building your leadership team. That's one area that I really excelled in with my peer group. Was when I first started building my leadership team. They give you guidance on that, who you should be looking for. My group is very big on Colby testing. I know that Academy is big on Colby testing as well. I'm sure some of the others are. And they give you the Colby results of what the various positions within your company should look like. They provide us things with like accountability charts, and organizational charts, so that we know who needs to be hired, when we should be hiring these people. These are all some of the types of trainings and sessions that have happened during my peer groups, and I know that Academy Group and all of these others have also discuss these types of things. So all of these individual issues like that you're going to face when you grow and scaling and adding new people to your team and changing processes and even doing things like the best way to obtain equipment. All right. There'll be all these types of discussions going on throughout your peer group that you'll get so much valuable information from. The next thing that I want to focus on here is going to be with growth. So let's talk about how this has helped some people grow. So I'm going to focus mostly on Chester and Chase here. Chester, tell us about the growth that you've seen. Like, where were you when you first started, and how many percentage, or if you share whatever you're comfortable sharing. But when you first started versus where you are now, what kind of growth have you seen? Do you attribute some of that to peer groups? Tell us about that.
I would say that peer groups have been the highest ROI investment I've made of anything in my business, right? As business owners, we're really investors. So we make money from the work we do, and then we can invest it in people or marketing or equipment or technology or wherever we want to invest it. The highest ROI, I can't even calculate it, would be investing in self-development by way of a peer group. So we started my parents' backyard like 6 years ago, and we made like $80,000 the first year. And geez, we'll do 4.5 million this year, just to be forthcoming with everybody. So I don't know what that kind of percentage is, but since I joined a peer group in 2016, we've probably grown 20x since then. And a lot of it's because of the stuff that we've already covered. You have a problem, you ask. You have an idea, you ask. You have a win, you can celebrate it. Chase was talking about trying to relate to your high school buddies when, they don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur. It's a lonely thing at times. It's a lonely journey. So even sharing your wins, you don't know who to go to when you sold a big job or you hired a key person. You can share that with the folks that are in your peer group. And when they give you positive reinforcement, it kind of boosts your confidence to go grow your business some more. So I think it's a conducive environment, if you're in the right peer group, to growth, not only from a tactical and informational standpoint, but just from osmosis of being around guys where they're doing cool stuff and they're big thinkers. So yeah, it's a powerful thing. It's really a powerful thing. When I joined a peer group, it was the most money I ever spent in my life. Like, it was more than my house payment, you know what I mean? Which is kind of scary, but it really wasn't that much money though, looking back, and I can tell you it's been worth every penny.
Yep, absolutely. Chase, tell us about your growth and whatever you want to share. You don't feel like you've got to share everything here, but how have you grown since you've joined peer groups, and do you contribute part of that growth to what you've learned in peer groups?
I would like to attribute everything I've done just to myself, right? But everybody knows that's a total lie. I would attribute like almost all of our growth to being in a peer group. I think that you always think that you're killing it, you're doing a really good job, and then you go get in a group and you meet someone who's doing like 10x what you are, and you're like, man, I am not thinking big enough. Like, I'm not near as cool as I thought I was. And so getting in that group, like Chester was saying, getting in that group with people who are bigger than you, it stretches you, right? Like, there's no one looks down on you in a peer group. And it's definitely like, I've never felt like it's a competition ever with anybody. But at the same time, like, you don't want to be the guy in the group that's like 5 years of sales decline, right? And going to the peer group and always falling behind. So there's definitely not a competition, but a push and a general sense of growth of, we're all going the same direction. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. When we got into so when I joined the Service Autopilot Academy peer group, I don't remember what size, I think I was right at $1 million. When I think our first year in Academy, I was at about $1 million in sales. Our budget this next year is a little under 12 million. So we've grown a lot. But I attribute that to being around people like Chester and Jonathan and all these guys. Since I've been on this Zoom, I've gotten 3 texts from people that either know me or been in peer groups with me, and just building that community of people is really powerful. And I would say outside of the general meetings, most of the conversations that I have with people in the groups are it's never just around nothing. I mean, you're definitely friends, but you're solving problems. It's like, hey, I've got this thing I'm working on. What do you think of this? And so that in general just produces growth, I think.
Absolutely. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here before we mention a couple of the other groups and open it up for questions is going to be the cost. So this stuff doesn't come for free, and you have to think about the value that you're getting out of it when you start putting a price to it, right? Because you're paying money to join a community of people, right? You're not getting something physical and tangible in return for it. So you have to know that going in, and these costs can be high. They can seem very expensive, especially as you are still small and growing. These can be very impactful for you on your bank account, but what they return is what you have to understand. You got to know that these are investments and that they're not really costs. So I'll start off with sharing like what I pay to be part of a peer group and what my peer group charges me. So in my peer group, I pay $1,500 a month to be part of my peer group. And so I'm paying, was that $18,000 a year to be able to have these people at my fingertips. And I would pay twice that amount. It's important to note that the value that these bring are worth so much more than the money. My first year in the peer group, I doubled the size of my agency in the very first year that I was there. They told me to do things like quit taking on project work and only focus on reoccurring revenue. And at that point, we were half of our revenue was project work. And I decided overnight to quit, and I cut our revenue in half and started focusing on just recurring revenue and working the systems, because I saw all these other people who were doing it before me. And like Chase said, they were way larger than me. And I was like, man, I am just thinking way too small here. So I did it, and our agency doubled in the first year. So I would gladly pay $18,000 every single year with the value that I'm pulling from the peer group that I'm getting. So let me go to you, Jonathan. Tell me about the costs for Service Autopilot Academy Group.
Okay. I guess I'll just tell you kind of my historical experience too. Like the group that I recently was in, I'm still in it, but now they don't charge me to be in the group, but I was paying $60,000 a year for that plus travel. And then I'm in a financial group that's $30,000 a year. So at peak, I was in two groups. I was paying $90,000 a year plus travel. I just bring that up like Tony did, because I think it speaks to the value. When I got my first group, which was this little bitty thing, Dan Kennedy started. It wasn't a little bitty, but it was this small group. Dan Kennedy, back in the day, it started. This is like 2008, 9 area. I can't remember. I remember it was $250 a month, and I was like, should I really do this? Is this worth $250? And I could afford it fine back then, but I still like, is it worth $250? I think all of us have probably been through that cycle, but everybody here has been through this, like, should I really spend the money? And it's funny how it's escalated. And I only give that example to say, I'm not a guy that'll just write checks for no reason. I want to get value out of stuff. And so that's why I gave my example. Academy is, I think, pretty inexpensive. There's 2 levels. The first level is $497 a month. It's the one with all the monthly trading and the Facebook group and all that kind of stuff. And then the next level up, we call Elite, is, I think it's $900 a month. And that's the one where it's pretty much got everything that the 497 group has, but we travel 3-4 times a year and get together. And then we have an additional monthly call every month. And so, I'm not giving all the details, but that's the gist of it. So roughly $500 and roughly $900 a month.
Gotcha. And real quick, and I want to ask about a couple of these others, but real quick, where are a couple of those travel destinations that the Elite group has gone to?
Costa Rica, Cabo, during COVID times, Cabo a few times. I think many of us have been to Cabo more times than I think I've been to Cabo 5 times in the last year and a half. Thanks to COVID. We've done a bunch of Jackson Hole, Vail, Salt Lake City. We just got back from Tahoe last week. We've done a lot of, and those are kind of winter trips, but we also have done a lot of summer trips where, like, we'll most likely be in Nashville next, but we've done a lot of summer trips. We've been up to see Chase at his place in Idaho Falls, where we're going and we're touring other individuals' companies that are within the group. And so it'll take us to different destinations that are in the US.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome. Chase, Chester, either one of you guys want to jump in and tell us what you guys actually look at as far as costs in these other groups that you're part of?
Yeah, and I've got a quick comment on that regarding cost. I think it's really important that if you're considering a peer group, you're in a group that costs money. If you think to yourself, well, I'll just go on a lawn care Facebook group and I can ask my question there, it's not the same thing. If you're surrounded by people that are willing and capable of paying hundreds or thousands of dollars a month to participate, you better believe that they have a contribution to make, and you also better believe that you're going to soak as much of it out of it as you can, because your money's on the line. So I think it's incredibly valuable that the groups are better when they cost money. Let's put it that way. So I'm a member of Jonathan's Service Autopilot Academy group. Like I said, I don't even look at that cost. The two items on my P&L that I never scrutinize, honestly, are training and education and advertising and marketing, really. So it's kind of funny I'm on this call. And then the other group I'm a member of is right around $10,000 a year. And, plus some added costs when we do various stuff or whatever. But again, worth every penny. I'm actually pursuing another group that I'd like to join that I think is going to be really beneficial.
So even you at your current level, you're spending over 20,000 a year in peer groups.
Oh, easy. Yeah. And not to mention, you were talking about putting your team into stuff. I'm sending my team through training all the time because it grows them, it strengthens them. And I also have a suspicion that it improves our retention, right? Because if you're willing to send people to stuff and invest into them and show them that you're willing to develop them, they respect you for that and they appreciate it. And not only are they more productive at work, but they're just a happier person.
Yeah.
So
yep. Absolutely. Chase, what are you spending financially speaking on peer groups?
All in with the trips and travel, it's probably somewhere between $80,000 and $90,000 a year. And
wow.
One thing I would say is if you get into a peer group that does a lot of traveling, just know upfront that there's added expense there, right? Like there's going to be dinners and hotels and airfare and things like that and rental cars. And so yep. I would just make sure that if you're going to get into a group and you feel like it's stretching you, make sure that you're getting into a group that does stretch you a little bit, not overspend, but make sure that you're getting into a group knowing that you can fully participate, knowing the all-in cost. And I would just tell people that are considering it to think about that part of it too. But it's probably 80 to 90 grand a year. And like Chester said earlier, ROI wise, it's probably the best money I've ever spent, hands down.
Absolutely. And I agree 100% too on the money I spend. That's what so many people don't understand in their blocker to get into the groups is it worth the money? Is it worth the money? And that's what a lot of people have to make, that leap of faith. And you're hearing from me, from Chester, from Chase, from Jonathan. All of us are very successful people that are telling you it is worth the money. All of us joined groups when our companies were not as big as they were. They've grown to these levels from the help of those peer groups. So don't feel like you can't spend money on these things, because you definitely will. You definitely can, should, and you will get the results out of it. All right, the last segment here we're going to talk about for just a couple minutes is some of the other peer groups that are out here in the lawn and landscape industry, as well as a general one here. So, and which one is going to be right for you? So first of all, Jonathan, let's start with Academy. Tell us who is the perfect fit for Academy, their size, their service focus, etc.
Maintenance would be who I'm most for. And the reason for that is simply because that's my background. At City Turf, we do zero revenue in design build. I mean, as close as we get, mulch and flowers are as close as we get to enhancement work these days. We've left all that other stuff. And so I'm very much about recurring revenue businesses, and that means maintenance. That doesn't mean I'm negative on design build or anything like that. That's just what I've done. So that's where my experience is. So if somebody calls me and says, hey, what should I be doing in design build? I almost always say, call Chase. I mean, because in the group, I don't know, man, I make stuff up, but that's not what you're asking for. So, so maintenance, first and foremost, if you want to build a recurring revenue business. And I apologize, Tony, what was the other part of the question?
Size, what size would be a good fit?
When it comes to the elite group, the top, and actually there's not even, and this is not a gimmick, it's not even possible to get in it right now. It's completely closed. And I'll just use that as an example. And again, that is not a gimmick. You cannot get into it. It's just that if whoever you're getting in a group with is not protecting that group, then meaning that they're not letting just the right people into the group, then it'll eventually implode. Over time, the group will implode because somebody else will get frustrated. They're not getting value out of it. They don't trust the other people in the group, and people will slowly leave. And so that's part one. And then part two is, I think that in the smaller, like especially the elite portion, we've always kept it smaller because it's more intimate. I just think that's the magic model. It's less profitable for maybe whoever's running the group, but I think it's the best for the group. So so that group, they need to be over $1 million, in my opinion. You don't have to be, but everybody in the group's over $1 million and well above. The $497 a month group is the feeder into elite, and that group, you know, I've had several individuals join that had zero revenue. They're outliers. These are individuals that joined and ended up building some really interesting stuff. That is really rare. It's not normally what I would advise. It's gone really well for them. In thinking about the data on that group, I think a tremendous number of people came in around the 300,000 range, the 250 to 300,000 gross revenue range. I have a theory on why that is. In the maintenance industry, that $300,000 to $400,000 range is a plateau that takes most people out. They have too many hats in the air, too many plates spinning, whatever analogy you want to use, and they get stuck and tired and everything else that comes with that. And that's when they're finally at a breaking point, or like, I need a solution here. And that's when they'll write the check to get in the group. So I think 300 is the number we most see, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to wait till you're 300. But I think it's a comfortable number where you also can easily afford it, unless you've got some serious issues with the business.
Right. Okay. So for Academy, we're looking at mostly the maintenance side, recurring services that could also go into the lawn care, fert and weed, and all those types of other services. And starting usually around 300 would be a comfortable range. There's a few outliers below, but around 300 is typically a comfortable range where you should easily be able to afford the Academy group. Another group that I want to call out here is going to be, I mentioned it earlier, Jeffrey Scott's Leader's Edge. This will be a group that's more focused on the design build side. They have very little focus on maintenance or the reoccurring services or lawn care, but a heavy focus on the project side. They do have a little bit on maintenance, but almost nothing in the fert and weed side, if that's one of your main focuses. That one is going, they have a couple of different levels on that one, and I believe they're open to pretty much anybody, but I think it would be around the same revenue mark that Jonathan just mentioned. You want to be at least a few $100,000 a year in revenue before joining that one. As far as the cost goes, I'm unsure on that one, and I won't speak for Jeff on his peer group on what it costs, but you can always inquire with him. That one's called Jeffrey Scott's Leader's Edge. The next one that I'll call out is one created by a guy named Adam Linneman, who also owns a lawn care company called The Green Executive. I think he's kind of between all of it, maintenance, fert and weed, some project work, all of that. I think that one's a little bit of a smaller one, kind of newer into the industry. Then there's another one that Marty runs, Marty Grunder, Ace Groups, which Chase is a part of. So Chase, can you speak at all about where people start at in that group and what they should expect as far as costs? If Marty wouldn't want us to talk about it, that's fine. But if you can tell us at least where people start at and who's a good fit for that group.
They kind of segment the groups a little bit. So there's enough groups that they try to group people by, like, they don't want to put someone in there who's 300 grand. They put them in a $30 million company. But they have a group where, you know, there's maybe more commercial maintenance focus in the group. And so they'll pair them up with commercial maintenance guys. The first group I got in, we were kind of in the $2 to $10 million range. And I was in that group for 3 years. I'm still in the group, but I moved into a new group after 3 years. I took about a 6-month break, got back into it. And the group I'm in is in the $7 to $30 million range now. And so they've kind of paired us with different guys that, again, stretch you a little bit. So that part of it's really cool. I don't know that talking about the price is a huge deal. I think it's on their website, but I think it's around $1,000 a month, if I remember right, for those events. But again, that doesn't include, you know, travel and hotel and airfare and those things. But I think it's around $1,000 a month. But there's a lot of planning, a lot of accountability. We are turning in financials and things like that for that group. And so it's just a little bit more maybe detailed than some of the other ones out there.
Gotcha. Good insights there. Chester, how about entrepreneurs organization? Now, this one's a general one. This one is not niche specific like all the others that we've spoke about. Chester, who would be a good fit for entrepreneurs organization?
Entrepreneurs organization is for founders only. So there's no hired guns. There's no, presidents of the company or employees. It's owners only. And you have to do over $1 million in revenue to be eligible for the group. But beyond that, I would say it's anybody who's into business, who's into personal growth and development. It is the most awesome crowd of people that I've been a part of, aside from the other peer groups I've been in. I mean, everybody in there is awesome. And there's serious value, like Jonathan mentioned early, in being around business owners in other industries, because industries tend to copycat each other. I learned that from Jonathan too. Everybody just copies what everybody else is doing, and then they wonder why their business is mediocre like everybody else's business. And so when you get exposed to people in completely different fields and just talk to them about your business, you oftentimes come away with some really cool perspectives.
Nice. So the different perspectives is what you say to actually be one of the big differences between a niche specific and a generalist group.
Absolutely. Yep. And I mentioned earlier the difference of tactical versus more, I guess, leadership type skill sets. So when you're in industry specific stuff, a lot of it is tactical. We're talking about very industry specific situations. But when you get into a group of business owners in other industries, you can talk about more general business and leadership type stuff, how to be a better coach, how to delegate, how to evolve, how to do those sort of soft skill type activities that become more and more critical as your business gets bigger.
Yep, absolutely. That's awesome. All right. So I hope people got some good value from this. If you did get some value for us, put a 1 into the chat for me. Let us know that you got some value out of this. I'm going to get ready to share a link into the chat with you guys. That's going to take you to a landing page on our website that is going to enable you to get a copy of this webinar rerun. It's going to have a couple of other check boxes on there. One, if you'd like to inquire with us about marketing services. Of course, we're hosting this, so we got to throw that on there. But we also have a checkbox in there if you're interested in inquiring with the Service Autopilot Academy group. Now, there's also obviously the other groups out there. I don't have check boxes on them because they're not in this event here with us. But since we have Jonathan and a couple of the other guys from Academy, if you are interested in learning more about Academy, then make sure you check that box on the link. Zach, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and share that link with everybody. And you can download a copy of this webinar, watch it later. And everybody who wants to inquire about Service Autopilot Academy group can just check that box, and those will all be forwarded over to Jonathan's team so that they can be reviewed and reach out to you. All right, so for the final segment here, I'd like to open the floor for any questions that anybody has. So the way that this is going to work, being that you do have the ability to unmute and turn on your cameras, if you have a question, throw it into the chat or raise your hand. There's the option to raise your hand right here on Zoom. So you can either raise your hand or throw something into the chat that you've got a question. We're going to spotlight you. We're going to bring you up here on the main stage with the 4 of us. Ask your question through your microphone, and then one of us 4 will answer your question. So if you'd like to jump in and ask a question, go ahead and throw it into the chat, or raise your hand and we'll call you up here. Unless we have no questions. Zach, we got anything coming in yet? Nothing. All right. I guess nobody has any questions then. Well, that's all right, because we actually ran a little bit over the time than what we should have. So nobody's got any questions. I guess if we answered everybody's questions in the during the chat here. Well, I hope everybody got some value out of this. Looks like, oh, there's our link. Looks like Chester and Chase and Jonathan, thank you so much for taking an hour out of your time to be with us, to give some of your insights to these people that are considering these peer groups. Well, we will, like I said, we've recorded this this chat here. We will publish it so people can watch it later and get this information later on. But I want to thank you guys for taking some of your time to be on here and talk about your various experiences with peer groups. Anything that you guys want to add before we close off here?
No, I think there are a lot of good points made. So just, I'll leave it with just be picky. Find the one that's right for you. It's not just about the money, it's the time commitment. And so be picky about the group you're in. I'll say what I said at the beginning again. Think about this as a journey. You're going to be in business for a long time. What is the problem you need to solve right now? Who do you need to meet right now? What do you need at this moment in time for you and your team? Go get that thing. When you need something different, move to a new group, get that thing. And that's how this, you don't have to leave the group, but don't feel stuck and don't feel guilty. You go get what you need for the season you're in and just keep growing your ability and growing your team's ability.
Awesome. Very well said. Chester, Chase, anything from you guys before we close off here?
I would just say you get out what you put in. So when you find a group, do your best to contribute where you can and meet lots of people and ask lots of questions. The answers to all your problems and questions exist somewhere with someone, and it's probably somebody who's done it before you. So don't be shy about asking. That would be my advice.
Absolutely. Chase, anything to send us off here?
The only thing that I would add to that is, like Chester said earlier, don't look at it as an expense, it's an investment. One of the analogies that I've always used is when you hire the right person on your team to solve a problem, the money kind of follows that person, and investing in a peer group is the same way. I know everybody's at different levels, but when you commit to it, you spend the money, you naturally grow, you figure out a way to pay for it. And it's just like hiring the right person on your team. It's just an investment. And it's one of the best ROIs we've ever done, like Chester said too. So my advice would be just do it, but be picky about the group you pick and find a good one.
100%. All right. Well, perfect. Wise words from three wise men. Guys, thank you so much for spending your time today here with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. That'll conclude our meeting today. And I appreciate everybody's time for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good seeing everybody. See you, Tony.
Yep. See ya. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. See you guys.
Yep. See you, Chester.